Hello, Johnson County. Welcome to this episode of the Texas Transparency Project, where we pull back the curtain on government and local politics that impact our lives. I'm your host, Greg Cooper, and today we will be veering far off our normal path to discuss facility dogs, which are a specific type of service dog. And we're back. It's Greg Cooper with Texas Transparency Project. And before we dive into facility dogs with our guest, we would like to thank Apos Ranch and Outdoors. Apos Ranch and Outdoors are a trusted source for animal supply, feed, animal care, archery, and more. Apos Ranch and Outdoors follows a tradition of the Apos family of businesses, founded by Fernando Rodriguez, where quality customer service and a commitment to improving the community come together. Apos's mission statement is to provide goods and services to our customers while creating a team approach to customer service and a commitment to continual improvement while actively supporting our community. Apos Ranch and Outdoors is located at 1501 North Main Street in Cleburne. That's 1501 North Main Street in Cleburne. Apos Ranch and Outdoors can be reached at 817-666-1164. That's 817-666-1164. Apos Ranch and Outdoors serves all of Johnson County and beyond. So normally we would be bringing you content relating to specific state, city, and school district issues, but today we have a different show for you. We're veering outside the box today to discuss something that is very important to me personally, which is facility dogs, or a type of service dog. This is something I believe in wholeheartedly, support enthusiastically, and have benefited from in many ways. So what is a facility dog? Well, to briefly sum it up, and before we dive into the discussion today with our guest, facility dogs are a specific type of service dog. Facility dogs have a specific set of skills and tasks that aid with the intervention for their chosen professional practice and in a specific location or facility. Facility dogs provide support by tasking, which enables individuals to function, do their job, participate in the daily activities in a specific environment or facility. Today, we have the privilege to be joined by Christy Smith, owner-operator and head trainer of Dog Trainer US from Peoria, Arizona. Christy Smith is a seasoned, experienced trainer of over 4 decades and is ultimately a subject matter expert often relied on dog training. Whether training basic obedience, search and rescue, service dogs, and specifically relating to today's discussion, facility dogs, Christy Smith is relied upon across the country and the world. For that matter, her expertise is valued and often sought out, and we are lucky to have her spend some time with us today regarding facility dogs. Christy Smith and I have known each other for close to a decade and have worked together to place numerous service dogs and 1 facility dog, and she's personally trained 3 dogs for me. Christy, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Greg.
So, Christy, you have over 4 decades of training dogs in all different varieties, from basic obedience, search and rescue to task-trained service dogs and facility dogs. Give us a history of how you got into dog training and the last over 40 years of training dogs.
Well, I'll give you a brief synopsis. I started training dogs when I was about 13. My parents had dogs that we did obedience and conformation with, and that's where I started. I started with whatever dogs we had on hand, and Dobermans and Collies. That's primarily what my parents raised. From there, we had dogs that were on the ranch in Colorado where I lived and grew up. And then I moved on to veterinary medicine, and within veterinary medicine, I was always getting asked to come out and assist the vets with difficult dogs, as I had a way of making sure that they did not bite the vets, and they always appreciated that. So from there, I went on to get involved in search and rescue back in the mid 80s, and everything has just kind of blown up from there. I started with search and rescue, and I had parents asking me if I could train their personal dogs to go find their autistic kids when they would elope. And I've got an interest in furthering the education on how I could better help special needs children. And that kind of transpired also into helping special needs adults.
Well, so you're out in Texas now. That's a long way from Peoria, Arizona. What brings you out here to Texas?
So I have service, facility, and pet dogs all over the country, all over the world, actually. And we do try to see them on a regular basis. I have in the state of Texas probably about 15 dogs now. So we try to make sure that we come check in with our clients and ensure that they don't need any help. We have probably about 8 or 9, I think, in the Johnson County area.
So, we're talking about facility dogs and service dogs, and you brought up some search and rescue dogs. And we're going to stay focused on facility dogs today. And people in the general public hear a lot of different terms: therapy dog, emotional support animal, service dogs, facility dogs. Everybody knows about the peacock on the plane as a therapy animal, etc. Can you tell us some of the differences between an emotional service animal, a therapy dog, service dog, and a facility dog to provide some context for the listeners today, Christy?
Certainly. An emotional support animal is an animal that just by being present makes its owner feel better. Dogs have a unique ability to, when we pet them and touch them, or they lean against us, of raising our oxytocin and dopamine, which are feel-good hormones, and reducing adrenaline and cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. So when the dog leans against us, applies pressure, we pet them, touch them, it raises the oxytocin and dopamine above the adrenaline and cortisol. So we feel better. An emotional support animal does not have to have training, and currently, under current legislation, they only have access rights under the Fair Housing Act. So if you are renting a property and somebody has more than 3 properties that they lease, they have to allow an emotional support animal access, even if they don't normally allow pets. You do have to have notes from doctors yearly to verify that you're in need of that emotional support animal. The biggest difference is emotional support animals are not taught anything. They really have no obedience requirements, much less task work or engagement techniques. Therapy dogs are dogs that we take to visit other people to make them feel better. Most therapy dogs are taught engagement techniques to get people to want to interact with them so that they feel better. Those are the ones that you see that go room to room in the hospitals, care facilities. Sometimes they use them in abuse or domestic shelters. A facility dog is much like a service dog in that it is taught task work. So it's taught to recognize physiological changes in the body, and then it is taught to do something to counteract those physiological changes. A service dog works for one individual only, and a facility dog works for multiple individuals in whatever location they're being utilized in.
So I have 3 service animals that have been trained by Christy: Ashley Girl, Tyler the Tyrant, and Hope. Hope being a facility dog, and so we're gonna veer into the facility dog dynamic now, Christy. So, what are some types of facilities where you most likely see facility dogs, and where are they most beneficial?
Facility dogs are used in law enforcement agencies, both in the agency for staff and victims of crime, as well as in courtrooms. We place them in mental health institutions to help get people more engaged in assisting with their mental health recovery. We see them in medical facilities, mostly with cancer patients. And then we also place them in educational facilities to assist in helping children and adults navigate the stressors that happen when in a learning facility.
So you bring up cancer. How can a facility dog help with a cancer patient? That seems a little bit outside the box. So what benefit can a facility dog get in a cancer unit?
So when the oxytocin and dopamine rise in the body, it changes some of the physiological changes that happen. And with cancer, it helps promote healing. When we take and drop our stress hormones, that also allows the body to heal at a faster rate.
And you bring up schools, and that's what I'm most familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
You've spent a lot of time identifying a local education facility and sourced a dog. We've named her Hope here locally in Johnson County. What benefits do you see in the educational facility, and how does a facility dog mitigate some of the challenges in an educational facility?
So as most of us know, it's very stressful for children to be separated from their parents and the rest of their family members to go to school. So there's stressors there that the dog helps mitigate. With the advent of COVID, we had a lot of children that were being homeschooled and not going to physical public schools or even private schools. And then when they suddenly got thrust into going back to school, those children had a very hard time dealing. In this day and age, we have a lot of kids with special needs, such as autism and other behavioral type things, because they have sensory overload. And the dog assists with mitigating that, in that they make the kids feel better. They're more serene, relaxed. They don't typically act out as much. The teachers have a much easier time in managing the students and teaching the students to stay focused and on task.
Well, and I think it's fair to say that pretty much everybody, unless they're averse to a dog or have had a bad experience, is just genuinely in a better mood. I know being in the military that we had individuals take the loss of one of our canines harder than the loss of a human sometimes, because of the bond that a unit would deal with an animal. So I think that these are things that most people will be able to resonate with in the specific ways that a dog just generally being present, let alone being task trained to do something specific for individuals and some of their challenges, just genuinely create a more positive and more effective environment. Speaking on the law enforcement side, what type of benefits do you see in a law enforcement dynamic, a law enforcement facility, whether it be for the victims of a crime or whether it be for the law enforcement personnel specifically?
So one of the biggest things that we see is a lot more retainment of law enforcement staff, because sometimes law enforcement is subjected to having to see or witness things that are very hard to comprehend, how somebody can do that to another human being, or even in an accident scenario. Also, with victims of crime, it allows them to relax enough that they will share what that encounter has been with investigators. So there's a higher disclosure rate. Nationally, 2 years ago, the disclosure rate for victims of crime, especially when it relates to those that are under the age of 25, was only about 35%. With dogs in some of these facilities, we're seeing disclosure rates of close to 90%, and that is significant.
So you bring up disclosure rate. Can you explain what disclosure rate is and why that's important to a law enforcement investigation, and why that's important to getting a case adjudicated for a victim appropriately?
Yes. So if you have a victim that you suspect has been a victim of a crime, but they're not willing to share the details, then it becomes difficult for an investigator to move forward with trying to bring somebody to justice for that. Let me catch my thoughts here.
Disclosure rate?
So the disclosure is them being able to recount one of the most horrific days that they've probably had. due to the crimes that were committed against them. And so it's really important to get those details so that the prosecution can form a strong case. Without that, sometimes they're relying on secondhand information, physical evidence, which may or may not point to the subject or to the person that committed the crime.
So here in Texas, we have a massive human and child trafficking problem. We're a border state, and we have large urban areas, we have rural areas, lots of ways to get through the state. And trafficking, frankly, is a huge problem. And there's a lot of organizations and nonprofits that deal with recovering these children and then getting them care, or recovering some of these trafficked women and getting them care after the fact, and after they're recovered. Is this something that a facility dog can be used at to assist with the disclosure rate? I think that everybody can understand how a victim of a crime against them personally, especially like potentially a sexual one or a crime against a woman with domestic abuse or something, would be horrific and difficult to trust what is, traditionally more often than not a male investigator. Is it fair to say that dogs in law enforcement institutions can help with that? Is that a good example of what we're talking about?
Yes, absolutely. It also helps promote the healing because most people who have been victims of a crime of some sort can only heal with acceptance of what happened to them. And a lot of times that is recounting it. But we try to internalize, and then when you do that, it goes from bad to worse. So the dogs do assist with that significantly. So they're assisting with that recovery.
So I think most people have heard of the service dogs. Facility dogs are pretty much new terminology. You and I have discussed these for quite a while and a number of years, and have begun trying to place them. Is there beginning to get some momentum and some visibility on this, and are they being more accepted? I know there's been some studies done on some of the positive benefits that are received, but is there more awareness of these, and how do you see the future trending regarding facility dogs and them being placed?
There is a lot more momentum with facility dogs now than there was 5 years ago. Facility dogs started with dogs that were being used in courtrooms to help victims of crime recount the details of that crime to the courts. Now they're starting to use them prior to that, and we're utilizing them in other areas. I would like to personally see a facility dog in every learning institution, as well as every law enforcement institution. We also have some that are in mental health because it also helps them work on their counseling health. And we're seeing some in medical institutions as well. But I'd like to see a lot more because they are such a beneficial resource. The problem becomes, the agency, institution, business determining how to best utilize that dog. Does the agency or institution purchase it, or do they have an individual that purchases it? There's a lot of training that goes into play with the facility dogs, since they are trained identically almost to a service dog, only having to task for multiple individuals. So they're always required to have a handler and, or in some cases, a backup handler or two to ensure that they're always available to do their job.
Well, I know that, and this segues into our next question, which is basically what are the challenges, and how can a facility learn about overcoming some of the concerns that they may have? I mean, I'm sure there's some insurance concerns. I'm sure that obviously, what do you do with the dog when the facility's not open? You kind of touched a little bit based on that, but what are some of the significant challenges, and how do we help facilities overcome? Because I'm a firm believer in this, this, and I've seen how they absolutely can benefit large swaths of people. Some school districts have programs where they bring therapy dogs in, for like an hour here, an hour there during a week, et cetera. I've seen some school districts institute training of a dog as part of a senior project, and you see benefits within the general school population that dog comes into contact with. But what can be done, and how do we raise awareness and just kind of pull back the curtain on some of the concerns some of these facilities may have that might consider placing a facility dog in them for work, Miss Christie?
So I think the first thing that they need to do is if they really want to look hard at having a facility dog, call somebody that trains them and get the information. Obviously, you have to decide whether whether you have identified somebody to handle the dog. It is not always easy to find somebody that handles the dog. If they're working another job within the facility, a lot of times in schools, they typically have counselors, and typically it's a counselor that handles the dog. The dog comes and goes with that counselor and or any backup handlers. Insurance is always a big thing where dogs are concerned because they are dogs. Facility dogs are trained to such a high level and they're temperament tested to ensure that we mitigate as much as humanly possible any type of negative interaction. But people startle from dogs and trip and fall and things like that. And the agencies or institutions do not want there to be a lawsuit because somebody came around a corner and saw a dog and startled and fell and injured themselves. Not that we want anyone to injure themselves, but those are things that do happen. So I always recommend that whether the facility dog is owned by the handler or whether they're owned by the agency, that there should be some insurance in place to account for that. There's logistics in, okay, who's paying for the food? Is it and a lot of that determines on who owns the actual facility dog. I've put together, what the average cost is with veterinary food, training, grooming, all of those types of things to give facilities the availability to look at their budget and see if it even accounts for that. There are a number of agencies around the U.S. that train facility dogs. We train a number of them for universities and schools all over the U.S. I don't have facility dogs outside the U.S. at this time, but I do have service dogs, so it's not a ton of difference. But you just need to do your homework when you're looking at it. And certainly I'm more than willing to talk to anybody about a service dog and about whether it would be appropriate for their particular facility, agency, institution, as well as help them look at the particulars, because those are going to vary a little bit with every agency or institution.
So if playing devil's advocate, if I own a facility, whether it be a hospital, some type of a mental health facility, a law enforcement agency, which are public owned, a school, whether it be public or private, one of the concerns that I would have would be, okay, we've just sourced a dog. This dog's been trained. This dog's been integrated into our facility. So dogs, can live up to 15, 16, 17 years. So, a year or two in training, you're talking about a 10, 12-year commitment. What type of support and long-term maintenance of this dog's training and the ability for the dog to do what it was originally trained to do can one expect from a company like Dog Trainer US or any reputable company? What should somebody who's concerned about this regression that a dog may have, in so much as helping them get over the hump to take the leap of faith to place one of these dogs?
Obviously, I can only speak from Dog Trainer US and what we do, but I would say that they need to see what their contract with the company entails, make sure that it entails, follow-up for the life of the dog. Most working dogs will work till between 10 and 12 years of age. Really depends on the dog. Most of the dogs that we place, it's easily 12 years. We only utilize dogs who have been specifically bred to do service or facility dog work from breeders who do a lot of health testing. And so we don't have a lot of medical issues. Anything can crop up, but we're mitigating our chances of a health issue. Dog Trainer US provides unlimited follow-up for the life of the dog. In Texas, I'm here typically 3 to 5 times a year, visiting in person with all of our handlers, with all of the dogs. We also offer Zoom lessons. And we're always available by text, phone call, email, etc. And it's for the life of the dog. I also do every couple of years, we do, and it's based on when the dog's public access ID expires. I like to see them in person every 2 years or more often to conduct a public access test, which means that they've exhibited appropriate behaviors for public environments in which the pet owners are not allowed to take their pets. So malls, restaurants, grocery stores, etc.
So, another concern that a lot of people here bring up is, what about allergies to dogs? What about you're putting a dog in a facility with a large number of people? What can be done, or how can facilities negotiate that concern regarding allergies to an animal?
So using one of the breeds that is either a hybrid, meaning like a poodle mixed with whatever, or using a purebred poodle or Bichon, the dogs that have hair instead of fur, will decrease the allergic responses. People can be allergic to saliva. We teach all of the service dogs no licking. So hopefully that is not an issue to contend with. There's probably not a dog in the world that doesn't shed a little bit, but the dogs who have hair versus fur tend to hold less of the environmental stuff that most people are allergic to, the dander, if you will, in their coats. Plus, keeping their hair cut a little bit shorter also assists with that. Especially in educational facilities, I always recommend that the facility put a note out to parents if it's from minor children, or to the students if it's a college or university, that there will be a facility dog on campus, and ensure that nobody's got any heartache over that. And if they do, what that is, so that they can take steps to ensure that that student is not at risk due to health or fear issues, etc. We teach our facility dogs to crawl. A lot of people are afraid of dogs. And when you have a dog who will crawl across the floor instead of stand, they're less imposing. And it also gets engagement from people who are afraid of a dog when they see them do that.
Well, I think that's awesome. And I want to let everybody know that Christy here's trained a facility dog and I'm blessed to be able to care for the dog outside of the facility. And her name's Hope, and she's a phenomenal dog. Christy here is visiting, checking up on Hope, doing the due diligence that she spoke about regarding making sure that I don't let the dog's training fall into a state that is not doesn't meet the requirements of Dog Trainer US, and that the dog isn't recessing in any way, and that the individuals in the facility, this is an education institution, are very comfortable with Hope, and that she's doing what she's meant to do, which is overall, here again, we talked about the dopamine and the oxytocin, about raising those feel-good hormones, and about decreasing the stress hormones, and about just creating a much more positive environment. Here in Texas and across the country, there's a lot of talk about things like social emotional learning and stuff like that. Dogs are apolitical ways that absolutely improve the mental health state of the environment that they're ingrained in, and I think that's pretty much. Most people can have some type of relation with understanding how dogs can do that. And Christy, we want to thank you for being here and doing this. And how can people reach out and contact you and Dog Trainer US regarding service dogs or facility dogs, or any type of a dog training that they may have? How do they get in touch with you?
Either through our website, which is www.dogtrainerus.com. And I don't think you need the www on there. I think if you just type in dogtrainerus.com, you'll get to the website. Our phone number is 623-826-2868. And email is info@dogtrainerus.com.
So that's info@dogtrainerus.com, and dogtrainerus.com is the website. Facebook, Dog Trainer US. And Christy, thanks for joining us today. And if you're thinking about, potentially a service dog or facility dog, reach out to Dog Trainer US. That's info@Dog Trainer US to discuss some options and whether or not this is a right step for you to potentially take. And just begin to educate yourself on this topic. I think you're going to be seeing a lot more of it in the future as it begins to become more readily accessible, the information, and more widely. The successes become documented of where these just phenomenal, magnificent animals have been placed to mitigate some of these challenges. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.